about it, what separates you from other people, because part of the thing is we are all one. So that sort of implies the ego is what stops us feeling that connection with other people or other things.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, ego creates boundaries, right? Ego is what says that, it creates that resistance to saying that maybe I am not an individual, maybe I am part of something else that is not what I identify with. And
welcome back to the show. I'm here with Komal Kaur, and we're going to be talking about how she's been shedding her ego over the last year and how that's affected her intuition and work. So welcome, Komal.
hi, thanks for having me.
I hope I'm pronouncing your name right.
It's Komal Kaur.
Komal Kaur.
Kaur.
Right.
Like C-O-R-E, Kaur.
And Kaur, of course, means divine princess or lioness or something of that nature.
Yes, princess. Yeah, it means princess. It was a name given to us by our 10th Guru Gobind Singh Ji. And it was to give women equal status to men.
This was 400 years ago, right?
Yes. Long time ago. So
yeah, and this is the Sikh religion for those who didn't realize what you're talking about.
That's right. Yeah.
So I've connected with that through Kundalini Yoga, which is sort of a sister or cousin, or I don't know. So came through Yogi Bhajan. Anyway, the reason I wanted to interview you is you wrote a very interesting New Year's post about how you'd set the intention for 2020 to remove your attachment to the I, to the ego, to the self that craves and identifies with labels. And you talked about shedding a lot of your ego in 2019 and letting go of attachments and had a bit of pain with that. So it's okay with you. We'll dig into that later in the episode. Sure. And talk a bit about the role of ego and intuition and business and awareness. So that's the plan for our conversation, and anything else that, Spirit brings up in the conversation. So I think we should start by, because that word ego is quite loaded, what is it to you?
So to me, ego basically is that part of myself that I identify with, that I give a label to, that is where I form the image of who I am. So, my name, for example, I have quite an attachment to my name because I love my name. How I look, the image, right? Right, the thoughts, the emotions that come up in my mind, how I feel, my body, what comes up in my body, all these aspects of myself which are outside is what I consider my ego, what I identify with, what I'm attached to, and what I feel separates me from someone else. What makes me me and what makes you, and that is my ego. So that's what ego means to me.
Now that's interesting you talk about it, what separates you from other people, because part of the thing is we are all one. So that sort of implies the ego is what stops us feeling that connection with other people or other things.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, ego creates boundaries, right? Ego is what says that, it creates that resistance to saying that maybe I am not an individual, maybe I am part of something else that is not what I identify with. And if I don't like that something else, I want to resist it. But that is also a part of us because it is part of the one. So ego is what, drives us to be an individual, and we in the West, everybody wants to be individualistic, right? Everyone wants to have their own, this is me, this is who I am. But that's what that is what separates us from each other.
Yeah, I mean, in the East, there's more of a community or group orientation. is.
Definitely, yeah. In the East, it's you're only as strong or as, you know, enlightened as the community that you're in, and that's why, you know, when you come together to do kirtan or chanting or meditate, you know, you come together in a group. You have a sangat, you know, you come together to sing together, to, you know, practice devotion together.
Sangat's another word for community in
Exactly. Yes, sangat.
In Gurmukhi.
That's right. Yeah.
Yes. Language of the Sikhs. Or Kundalini yogis. So it just occurred to me that another common group is when people get together and work in the same business. So I know you've worked in businesses in I think in Malaysia you've worked in businesses, and you've also worked in Western businesses.
In Singapore, yeah. I'm from Singapore. Yeah.
Oh, you're from Singapore? Oh.
Yes, I am. Yeah.
Oh, well, I got it one country off, next door to Malaysia.
Close enough. Yeah, well, at least you know where Singapore is. It's better than a lot of people. But so, yeah, I was born in Singapore, you know, grew up in that system, and then I worked for 9 years in Singapore. And to be honest, I was quite lucky to be and very blessed to be part of a company that saw us as a whole system and not as just individual people competing against each other. And you're right, that's where it comes in. Ego comes in into the business as well, because a lot of businesses have a very competitive environment between the employees or between the hierarchical levels of business. And it's not necessary to be competitive. I think that a more powerful environment is that of a collaborative one instead of a competitive one. And to collaborate, you do need to shed a bit of ego. You know, you do need to say that, okay, maybe, you know, I will listen to your point of view, and maybe my point of view is not the best, you know, and maybe I'll compromise a little bit. You know, I don't need to prove that I know everything, or that I'm the best, you know. So yeah, collaboration is, I think, very, very important. And it comes when you start to remove a little bit of that ego that makes you, you know, very attached to your role, and say that, I'm going to prove who I am, and I'm going to be better than everybody else in this organization.
Yes, that's another aspect of ego, the labels, you know, I am a, you know, whatever, operations manager, or whatever the role is you have.
And therefore, I know this part of the business better than you, who is in sales. So how, you know, how dare you come and tell me how to run this? Like, I don't believe in that. I believe that you can learn from everyone, because we all tap into the same consciousness. We all tap into the same self, and there is something to learn from everyone around you.
So does this relate to the shift from the age of Pisces to the age of Aquarius? You know how we have these roughly 2,000 year long ages, and the age of Aquarius in theory started in 2012.
Yeah, I have heard about that, but to be honest, I haven't actually dived very deep into it. But the planet, and I do believe in astrology, and the planet is going through shifts, and we all shift together at the same time. So there is no way that we're not affected by the shift in the planetary systems either.
Because I think the age of Pisces was more about individual
isolation,
and ego.
Yes. Yeah. Basically, when you isolate yourself, you know, you are just more about yourself and who you are. And yeah, there is definitely a shift, I think, and I feel it. I don't know if I feel it because it's coming into my awareness, and therefore I think it's there, or it's always been there. I can't really say.
And I think it is the case that there are businesses that are shifting more towards collaboration and, you know, egoless work. And even I'm involved in software development in my other business. And, you know, there is this concept of egoless programming there, where you don't, you know, on pair programming and code reviews, where groups of people, you know, you're more interested in getting the software to work right than whether what the code you wrote was wonderful.
Exactly. Yeah, absolutely. And I'm sure we've all been there, working in businesses where, you know, it's been where you've described as toxic. And usually that word comes about because you feel like you're being pitted against your colleagues. You know, the competition element is there.
Now, how much of that do you think relates to the the patriarchy or matriarchy that has been in society, where men controlled a lot of things in the past, and there was a kind of male way of being in business?
Yeah, I mean, definitely there is an element there, but what's really what I've noticed is that's quite sad to me is that even women have followed that system now of that basically the patriarchal system in business is important because it's what drives the business forward and it helps it grow because men are sort of designed to do that, right? To go out and hunt. At the same time, because women have been forced into the workplace, the only way that we think that we can get forward is by adopting that system, by becoming like men, by being competitive, by going out and hunting. And I don't see a lot of the matriarchal elements much in business, to be honest, because every business is about growth, about profit, about, and it's fine. That's how that's the only way that you can actually sustain it, right? You need to make profit, you need to make money. But what if it didn't have to be as competitive as a culture within the business? What if we paid more attention to our heart, our health, and brought those nurturing qualities of women, of those yin, these yin qualities into the business? What if we did that? Is there anyone out there who's willing to test it and see what happens? What happens in a company?
I think there are companies out there, working that way, and it also occurs to me, maybe you can combine both elements of male and female. Just
Definitely.
like the yin and yang symbol, it's the circle and it has the little dot of the yin inside the yang and a little dot of the yang and the yin, and they're all kind of swirling together.
Exactly.
I think there's some value in being goal focused, and there's value in holding space and nurturing.
Yes.
So where we run into problem is when it's only one or the other.
Correct.
If it's all ego and goals and competition, it's not very, first of all, it's not as effective as it could be business wise. It makes less money, and perhaps more importantly, it's not paying attention to how much joy is in people's hearts from the business, both the employees and the customers and the vendors.
I've been in that place before, where I worked for a company that was very, very competitive and very goal focused, and I burnt out. After a year, I burnt out because there was no attention given to the well-being of the employee, and you lose good talent, when that happens. So it's a shame. Yeah. But you're right. It needs to be balanced.
And just to be clear, to emphasize that companies lose good talent because the talent walks out the door and quits or gets sick because they're burnt out. But it also loses good talent because they don't feel they can bring their whole self to work, and they don't contribute their best ideas. They just do what, I forget how you describe this, but someone who's in their job and they just do the minimum necessary. There's a phrase for that I'm forgetting.
Yeah, but that's also because a safe space hasn't been developed, right, for the employees to present their ideas, because if they know that when they open their mouth, they're going to get shut down, then they're just going to keep quiet. They're going to keep it to themselves, right? So that's where the maternal has to come in, and, it has to create a safe space, for the employees to be able to bring themselves, their whole selves, to the company, to the job and to the business, and to contribute, in any way that they can to the business, and know that they're not going to get shut down or going to be made feel small or going to be made feel like their ideas are not valuable. Even if it doesn't apply to the business, there is a way to say thank you, for sharing this. We might look into this later, but we really value that you brought this to the table. You've got to create that safe space, and because that safe space is not there in companies, people don't bring their best, they don't bring their all, they just do the bare minimum.
And I think that particularly happens in larger companies or in government. I'm sure we've all had experiences of interacting with government agencies where, occasionally you run into a really joyful and helpful person. But to be honest, a lot of people in government agencies, they're burnt out and they're not giving their all.
Yeah, exactly.
Which is kind of sad because they're there to support the whole country or state or city or whatever bit of government they're in to do better, and yet they themselves are burnt out and not feeling they can contribute. Yeah, it's very interesting. I think this is a very deep topic. I mean, we started off as your individual ego journey, and we'll come back to that in a little bit, but I think there's actually something for all businesses to learn here about the role of ego and whatever the opposite of ego is. What is the opposite of ego? You talk about nurturing, but is there a word for the opposite of ego?
For me, what is on the other side of ego? For me, the other side of ego is self-realization. It's just self-knowing. And when you know yourself, then you know that you are a part of the whole and that we are all one. And then you can bring that to every aspect of your life. You can bring that to your work relationships, to your family. You become more relaxed around people. You become less judgmental. You have less attachment to expectations, and it just creates a more softer you. And it doesn't mean that you're not productive. It just means that, you're able to see everything from, you're able to look at everything and see that we're all part of the same machine, So for me, that's the other side of ego, where it's just a knowing. It's an awareness, and it's hard to explain what that is. But it when you're in a team, like at work, and you really enjoy it, and the joy that comes out of that interaction that you get with your teammates, like that for me is on the other side. Like that's the feeling that comes up for me, when I'm in a team that I really love, and I enjoy working in. It's joy, and that joy that you bring to your team, you bring to the company, right? And then that company brings that into the world. So yeah, that for me is the opposite on the other side.
How does that I know your last job you were working remotely. How do you apply that to a remote team? Because it seems easy to do if you're in an office.
Yeah, definitely.
Be together.
Perhaps a little bit easier, but remotely it's really possible. And communication, for me, that's the big thing. For me, two things, right? The communication, open communication among team, and the safe space. And I think that those two are the most important things, and how we get to that element of joy within the company. It's doable because I felt joyful in my last role, so I felt good, and I felt like I could approach anyone, no matter what level they were at. And I felt like we were all happy. We were happy to be there. We were happy to contribute, and we were happy with the products that we were putting out in the world.
So picking who is on the team is pretty important.
Definitely. Definitely, but also setting the culture and then communicating that culture is really important, because there are times when we are not at our best. We're not at our best 100% of the time. Things take us out of our center. Things upset us. And sometimes we bring not our best self to work. But let's say you had an interaction with a colleague which wasn't the best. You could have been nicer. It is, if you had that open, loving culture in the relationship in that company, the colleague would see that and be like, I see maybe you're having not a very good day today, or I I can see that you're struggling, or you're not feeling so good today, or is there something that I can help you with? Is there something that's where this is coming from? And I remember doing that with a previous colleague, where she was, I think that just wasn't one of her best days, and she was just really upset, something, maybe stressed, and she came up and she said some things to me, and I was like, the first thing I asked her was, is everything okay? Are you feeling all right? Like, is there something that I need to know? Like, is the workload too much? Are you having trouble meeting your tasks? Like, that's where I went to, because I was like, I knew that this is not who she is, and she is not presenting her best self, right? So it's not about attacking the person, but saying, how can I support you so that you can bring your best self to work? And that was really good, because it opened up communication for the both of us. And she opened up about how she was quite stressed, and then she was moving and everything. And and she apologized, and she said, I'm really sorry, like, I'm not always like this, and I want to be professional. And I was like, yeah, it's fine, it's okay, and just forgiving, right? And it's forgiveness, and then moving forward.
When you mentioned that issue, I knew someone who worked at the Gratitude Cafe in San Francisco, which is a nice place to visit if you're ever in California. Okay. I think they have one in Los Angeles too, and maybe there's one in New York, I forget. But the point I want to make is they have a team meeting every morning where everyone shares, is there something going on in their life that could affect work? So they can just be heard, and also so people can be aware. Yes. And I think that helps them be more cohesive as a team.
Yeah, it's not an excuse for employees to slack off or to to not work, right? But it creates a space where everybody knows what everyone is going through, and they're more understanding. And I've noticed that it also, that once you get that off your chest, and you know that someone else knows what you're going through, you actually want to bring your best self, and you want to show that you can get through this, and you are committed, and that you have the team's interest at heart, and that you're not just about you, right? You are about the whole. So I found that it's quite powerful. It is quite powerful. Yeah.
Very interesting. So let's talk about 2019, when you had some exciting times that caused you to shed parts of your ego. Maybe we can dig into what, was there something that triggered this, or did you just sit under a banyan tree one day and become really aware that you needed to shed some stuff?
I think that a part of me has always felt like a little bit, I've always seen the world as like a play, like a movie almost around me. But I never really gave it a lot of attention. But obviously, because I studied this Guru Granth Sahib, the teachings tell us that there is more than what we are just seeing around us. So there's always been that inner knowing that there is more than what's around us. And what happened in 2019 was that I realized how much I was still holding on to labels and my identity of who I thought I was, right? Really strong, really, really strong. And this happened because I felt ill, and I was having some health issues, and I've been having them since about 2015. So out of nowhere, suddenly, they erupted, and I was always just tackling them, as they came, and my life just kind of went on. But I would tackle the health issue, it would go away, and then, I would just go back to life. But I never really dug deeper into it, or I thought I did contemplate on it, but didn't really get anywhere significant. And in 2019, it happened again. The health issue came back, and I thought, okay, I need to look deeper into this. And I've been vegetarian since I was for about 14, 15 years. And that was the one label that I was really holding on to very, very tightly.
Oh.
And
why were you holding on to it so tightly? Did it make you feel virtuous? Or?
No, not because of that. Because of the way that I became vegetarian, that was one of the reasons. And secondly, because it's one of the things that I felt like was in my power and that nobody could take away from me. Like, yeah, I could lose a job, or, I could lose whatever. I could lose things around me. I could lose relationships. I could lose, whatever. But this is my decision. It's in my control. You can't take this away from me. So that is what it was. Yeah, I was just really holding on to that need for achieving this this label of being vegetarian, And I told myself, no, never again, meat ever. So when the health issues came up, I had to actually get someone to help me with them. And the first thing that they said was that I was suffering from nutritional deficiencies. And these are deficiencies that couldn't really be provided from a vegetarian diet, and I had to incorporate. Well, I was already eating eggs occasionally, but I had to start eating eggs every day. I had to start taking dairy products. I had to eat cheese. I had to take beef liver. I had to take all of these, and it was through so much resistance, at the expense of my health, that I started doing these things. And it was really painful. It was really, really painful, because you are talking about asking me to change who I am. I'm a vegetarian. How can you ask me to eat beef? What are you talking about? No way,
Now that's interesting. You said I am vegetarian rather than saying I eat vegetarian.
Yeah.
Because you identified with it.
Exactly. Yes.
Or even I am eating vegetarian today.
Yeah.
Be even less tightly held.
Totally. That was not how I came into vegetarianism. So that's why I was holding on to it very tightly, because I was convinced that it was like a divine, thing that happened in my life. Because whenever anyone asked me, why are you vegetarian? The truth is I never became vegetarian because, I loved animals or because I wanted to help the environment. It wasn't any of those things. It was actually just kind of like a deep desire within me, which was like a nagging feeling, and which was like, this is the right thing to do. Like, it just felt like the right thing to do. And when I went vegetarian, it was like this, literally overnight. Like, that's how I tend to be in life as well. Like, I'm not a gradual, slow, no, I just go, like, I make a decision and the flip switches in my head, and suddenly I'm from one thing to another. So that's how I became vegetarian as well. It was quite transformational, right? Because you transform your brain from a meat eater to a vegetable eater, right? Like, in an instant. So that was another reason why I was really holding on to it very tightly, because I was like, this is divine, this is, it's more than just me, but at the expense of my health. And when I was struggling with my health issues, I wasn't
Are you okay sharing what your health issues were? Or is it
yeah, sure. I mean, it wasn't like, it's not like cancer or anything like that, but it was mainly like an autoimmune, not diagnosed, because no one's going to tell you what it is. No one knows, right? Doctors don't have any idea of, they don't know a disease until it becomes really bad. But if you work with naturopaths, they can tell you that, okay, you are exhibiting autoimmunity symptoms. So I tested myself for leaky gut, and it turned out that I had a hyperpermeable gut membrane, which means that the gut was actually allowing more through than it should. And before, I never used to really believe in leaky gut, because I was like, how can a gut be leaky, right? but like, what does that even mean? And yeah, then I got the test done, and it's a very scientific test. And I have a scientific background. I actually did biotechnology as a degree, so I did that, and I was convinced by the results, and I was like, okay, this makes sense that if my gut membrane is hyperpermeable, then it's allowing food substances into my system, which is then causing an autoimmune reaction. So I had a hyperimmune reaction basically to almost anything I ate. And then that would translate in rashes, in hives, in mostly rashes and hives. So it would be always on my skin. Right. So this would come and go every year.
So prior to that, you just put a cream on it, or what? You attacked it tactically.
So
and it's interesting you use the word tackled, because that's a rough sports metaphor from American football or rugby.
It could also be like a Singaporean thing, because we love to use the word tackle.
Oh yeah, but that's quite an aggressive way to treat your body, right? To tackle it instead of to nurture it.
Yes, exactly, because my idea was that this is a disease, I have to fix it, right? And I wanted to fix it in the fastest way possible. So I had to tackle this situation, tackle this, this thing. And I removed a lot of things from my diet, didn't really know what I was doing, thought I knew what I was doing, and that really actually, now that I look back, I can see how that caused more nutritional deficiencies. And so it all came up to this year where I realized, I couldn't even be out in the sun for too long. And I'm born in the tropics, for God's sake, like I'm a tropical girl. And if I can't be in the sun for more than an hour without having rashes, then something is wrong. And that's when I went out and, I started listening to my husband, Michael, who is very, 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 very intelligent, and he knows a lot about health. And I reached out to a naturopath who basically, had the same thing to say as he did. And I was like, okay, you know how you never listen to the people closest to you, right? You always need to pay loads of money to someone else to tell you. So that was my journey basically. But then I had to nurture myself and be okay with the fact that it was going to take time, because nutritional deficiencies are not something that you can take a pill and then it fixes overnight, right? It takes time, to nurture your body with the right nutrition, with the right food, with what it needs to get better. And that's the journey I am on right now,
How interesting. The word nurture and the word nutrition sound very similar. I wonder if they have the same origin.
Don't they? Yeah. I wonder.
I think they probably do. I'll look that up later. So, but you got, your health got better, or after you shifted your diet?
Like I said, it's not a overnight thing like it is if you just take, a couple of supplements which attack just that issue. So I've been looking at it from a more from a core, what do you call that? The root cause, from a root cause perspective. And like I said, that takes time. So now it's been about 8 months, 9 months, and I am much better. I can be out in the sun. My markers are looking a lot better. Can you believe that I was vitamin D deficient? And I thought that I was getting loads of sun. But this thing about vitamin D as well. See, to make vitamin D, you need to be in the sun. If you go out in the sun, you get tanned. If you get tanned, you get dark. And this was another label that I didn't realize that I was actually holding on to, because I thought I had shed it. I thought I had shed that, idea that dark is not beautiful, because that's what's ingrained in us Indians from young. My grandma until today, when she sees us, she's like, oh, you're so dark, like with that pitiful look on her face. Oh, you're so dark. And so fair is beautiful in our culture. And I didn't realize how I was willing to go to be tan to a certain point, but not beyond that, So that was another thing that I had to shed this year. I was like, no, what's more important, my health or what people perceive of me? And when you're healthy and you look in the mirror, you see a healthy person looking back, you feel good, you know. But if you allow someone else's thought about you determine how you think about yourself, then no matter, you're going to keep yourself unhealthy, because that's going to make your body unhealthy as well, right? So I was vitamin D deficient, and now my vitamin D is, better in range. And I still go out every day and I still get the sun. I'm still trying to get it better. And it's interesting to see how one marker then starts to have like a domino effect on the other markers in your body, and the rest of the markers also improve. So
what do you mean by marker here?
Markers basically they are indicators of health. So for example, like when you do blood work, you get your liver panel done, you get your kidney panel done, whatever, right? So all of those tests, like all of those values are markers, right? They're indicators of health. So like vitamin D is one marker. Then you've got inflammation, which is HSCRP. That's another marker. So that's just basically what I mean.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm in an investigation myself into health. I'm kind of curious what your definition of good health is. What is health?
For me, health is when I wake up in the morning and I feel good mentally, physically, and spiritually. Health for me was something that I used to look at not on a holistic level, but more from a very disjointed, place. And it's very, very difficult, to not address every one of those parts of yourself if you want to be really healthy, and you could be totally enlightened, but you could be bedridden, right? So how are you then showing up for the world? Like, how are you contributing to the world? Or, I mean, maybe you can, but I haven't quite figured that out yet. And I would rather be healthy in all aspects as much as I can.
Yeah, I mean, I think how we feel in our mental health, physical, emotional, and spiritual, is important. The block I get in my own head is that's kind of subjective. I could put a 0 to 10 number on that, how good I feel today, and that's, I guess, where those biomedical markers come in, because that's a more objective measure of how different functions are happening in the body.
Yeah, definitely, absolutely. So, like, I felt really good from sun gazing. I spent a month in the rural Portugal and in the Algarve, and I spent the whole month sun gazing in the morning and sun gazing in the evening. And what that did for my mental health was amazing. I was so calm, peaceful, joyful. But my markers still didn't look great, and they didn't look great because I wasn't getting vitamin D. I wasn't going out in the sun at the right time. When you start to understand how the world works, how the body works, how the sun interacts with your body, to create this amazing molecule that then interacts with the rest of your body to create you, it just gives you that perspective that there is something so much bigger than what we can see, and really grasp with our little minds. So this has been another huge awakening for me, this journey into health and understanding little bit to get more understanding of the whole. And that's why I say, like, the more I learn, the less I know, because I realize how little I know. And so if I've learned so much and I still know so little, then I must know nothing, right?
I'm not sure I'd take it that far. I get what you're saying. I think it is good. The more someone is a master of something, the more they realize they don't know, the more there is to learn. We never get to the point where we know everything about a topic. So, and certainly health is a very big topic. So many different ways people address health.
Yeah, definitely. It's very individual, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, health is kind of a vitality. It's the amount of life force that is going through our cells, our organs, our aura, energy field, different dimensions we present in this three-dimensional world. And I sort of wish, I don't know if you ever watched the old Star Trek things where Dr. What was his name? Bones. I forget his real name. McCoy, Dr. McCoy. He'd put them on this table and they have the tricorder reading, and it would kind of show a little thing of health level,
Yeah.
Maybe one day we'll have little machines that can measure our health, just like happens on video games, where you can see, oh yeah, my health is really good, or this aspect of my health is good.
There are systems out there, but it just depends on if you believe in them. Like there are technologies out there which show you straight away in your body by testing you. This is where you're low. This is where you're high. You need to balance this. And I've played with those things.
Which one was your favorite?
I don't think that they came to me at the right time in my life for me to say that, oh wow, this is my favorite. But at this moment in time, my favorite is really understanding how the body works and addressing the root causes of what's causing your unhappiness or your issues, right?
Yeah, I mean, for me, I see dis-ease. First of all, I'll spell it with a hyphen in the middle. It's dis-ease, lack of ease in that part of my body, or mind, or whatever the aspect is.
Yeah.
And I see them as messages from spirit. It's something I need to learn or change, and it's coming through my body. And if I listen at an early stage, when it's just like a slight disturbance in my health, or you were saying when you were getting minor symptoms, but it wasn't life-threatening, then it's easier to shift, and the longer I wait on a health issue, the harder it is to shift. And in some sense, it's that phrase, as within, so without, it's the beliefs and thoughts I have can affect my body.
Definitely.
If I'm getting sick somewhere, it's an indication I need to shift something in my internal world, in my spiritual world, in my belief world.
Yes, so I did go deeper in that as well. And, it can seem quite woo-woo and metaphysical to some people, but for me, it made a lot of sense because, it was all about the gut, right? So it was, I was obviously holding a lot of trauma in there. I was obviously holding a lot of, resentment, unhappiness. And so it's not a coincidence. The body does hold, all these memories. And then it translates, like you said, it creates an atmosphere of unease and dis-ease inside on a cellular level, which then becomes into a dis-ease that you can see on a physical level, and then you know that you got to address it. And you cannot just address it from a physical point of view. You also have to address it from a mental and a spiritual point of view, which is why I went down this route of the ego, because I was like, I'm not just a body, and I'm deeper than that. What is it,
Yeah. I mean, to me, the mental picture comes if you had a house and the foundation was off and the walls were kind of starting to have cracks in, you could just kind of cover up the cracks with putty or whatever, or you could fix the problem in the foundation and solve the problem, permanently.
Totally. So, that's a great analogy.
Yeah. But so many people today, they are popping pills or, doing other things to cover up and, cover up the cracks, or they're putting on dark glasses of, addiction, so they don't see the cracks, either drinking or overeating or video games or social media
or even sunglasses,
shopping.
And disconnecting yourself from the source,
Oh, you don't believe in sunglasses?
Not anymore.
Now, it's interesting. A lot of people do wear sunglasses.
Yeah.
Why do you think so many people wear them?
Well, it's a very long conversation, but really it always comes down to they're wearing them because they feel discomfort, and the discomfort is coming from the fact that their bodies are not able to take the energy from the sun, right? But the sun is a source of life, right? So they're disconnected from the source of life. And we have become separate from our source. And therefore, separation has become part of our lives. So, yeah.
I think that's true. And also for some people, it's separation from other people. They can hide a bit.
Oh, yeah, that's true. I did used to love wearing my sunglasses and then sleeping on the train because I'm like, no one can see I'm sleeping.
Yes, and those trains in Singapore can be quite packed.
Exactly. Yeah. Got a helicopter.
So you mentioned you had quite a lot of pain in this releasing these bits of your ego. Tell me more about that. Why was there so much pain involved?
You know, when there's a death of something, there's always pain.
Really?
So for me, yes, personally.
Oh. Why is that? Why does death cause pain?
Because it's letting go, isn't it? It's emotional. And I'm not saying that's how I feel now, but it was back then. So now, like when I got laid off last week, 2 weeks ago.
Last week? Wow.
2 weeks ago, yeah. I was sad for like.
You sound very calm.
Yeah, I really am, because that's the death of something, but it's not the death of me, and it's not the death of what I know I am. But I didn't know this before. And so anything that would finish or close in my life, whether that was, you know, my identification with a label, like that I'm vegetarian, you know, or even my health, you know, the fact that my health was declining, you know, was like a death of the body, right? It was painful, it's emotional, it's very hard to let go to something that you're attached to. It's like imagine like when you were like, okay, so I really love my family. I'm very close to them, right? And when I think of my mom passing away, for example, that brings up like a lot of sadness and
when did she die?
No, if she were to pass away, I can just imagine.
This hasn't even happened, and you're getting upset about it.
Not now, but I was like that's the analogy, right? So that's why it was painful, because death to most people is painful. Right? It's sad, it's emotional. Because you're holding on to something so tightly.
So the pain is related to how tightly you hold on to something.
Yeah, I mean, for me, yes.
Yeah, I think pain is sometimes resistance to change.
Oh, definitely. The ego is very good at that. The ego is our stubbornness, right? So it resents any kind of change. It resents anyone with a different idea of how you should live your life or how things should be, because, you know, how can they know better, you know? And that's why we are so stubborn. So yeah, it's a lot of resistance.
But I mean, in some ways, all growth involves something dying.
Exactly.
You can't have life. You know, you can't have a tree growing without some cells dying.
Exactly. And even our bodies, right?
There are always cells dying.
You can't make new cells without old cells dying. And so once you start to really understand that and know that that's part of life.
But do you think our body's cells are grieving every day because millions of their sisters are dying?
No.
How do they deal with this then? How do trees in the forest deal with other trees dying?
I think that there is no grief on a deeper level. There is no mourning, there is no grief, there is no sadness, there is no any of those emotions, because emotions come from our thoughts and thoughts come from our mind. And on a deeper level, there is no mind, there is no body. There just is. So there is actually nothing of that out there. They don't have to deal with it because it's not there. It doesn't exist.
At that level of consciousness, it doesn't exist.
Yeah.
I sometimes think of that we are all one and we're all individuals as like waves on an ocean. All the waves are individual. On the other hand, they're all part of the same body of water in the ocean. And waves do die when they reach the beach and crash. It's quite beautiful,
and then they come back and they join the rest.
Yes,
of the oneness,
back.
And then they come back as one. And then, it's beautiful cycle, isn't it?
Yeah. I once read that GOD for God could, one acronym is generating, organizing, destroying. Three aspects of God. There's like growth, there's organizing, and then the destruction.
Like Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva, the Hindu Trinity.
Which one of those is the destroying one?
Shiva, the destroyer.
Shiva's the destroyer. Okay. Is that like Kali in the Hindu?
I'm not sure actually, but I don't know if she's the destroyer.
Right. I think Christianity doesn't have quite so much of that.
They have the Holy Trinity, but I don't think they have the same concept of
creating and destroying, organizing. It's a bit different. Which would mean that some Eastern religions that have that concept would be more accepting of change and death.
Yes.
Which is maybe why so many Western people went to the East to learn from it. Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, I do feel, just from looking at my own grandparents, for example, there's this concept of stoicism, but I don't know if it's actually stoicism or more like a surrender, and surrender to the forces of life, and to how the world works, this creating, organizing, or sustaining, and then destroying. And they just surrender to that process. They surrender to that cycle of life, and they are happy. Like my grandma is like an angel on earth, and it's really something to see, because she's very, very spiritual, and that's where it comes from, her daily meditations, her daily prayers, and just that surrender. So it's really it's so inspirational for me to see that in her, to see someone actually exemplify that for me.
Now, you mentioned before we got on the podcast that when you were laid off, you also felt you were getting a lesson and a growth opportunity. Can you tell us more about that viewpoint?
Yeah. Well, first of all, for anyone, who's been in the workforce, getting laid off or leaving a company is part of life, right? That happens. And I think that it was like a surrender for me, because it became something that I was again getting attached to. And I remember that 2 weeks before that, I had an intuition, that something wasn't right, that the company owner was not going to be able to sustain this, but there was no indication from the company itself, but I had an intuition about it. And I actually sort of, just put it out of my mind, because, you're just being negative or whatever. And just a week after that, I remember speaking to someone and saying, I am so proud of where I am today because of how I've reinvented myself. Because from a biotechnologist working in a lab, I've gone to working remotely in a field completely different, right, to what I studied. I invented myself. I reinvented myself. And that's ego. It's not a coincidence that all of these things happened, boop, 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 one after another, So that's why I'm not stressed or sad or any of those things, because I'm just like, yeah, well, of course, duh. Hello, this is just another thing that you've got to attach to.
So you saw this as an opportunity to grow, and
it's always an opportunity to grow, because every single time that I have found myself in a position where something was taken away from me, that life just got better. Life just always got better, because you learn step by step how to surrender, and you learn step by step how to go within, and you learn step by step that actually nothing really is yours, nothing really is in your absolute control, and it's only how you perceive it that causes the suffering. It's how you perceive it that causes, the resistance, and that's the ego.
And perception is possible to change.
Yeah. You are in control of your experience. You are, by how you perceive, how you choose to perceive.
I think that's a very powerful shift that we can make in our lives and businesses.
Yeah.
Shift the perception. I mean, I'm part of a gratitude group right now where we're each supposed to post something we're grateful for that we haven't posted about before in the Facebook group. And it's like a daily gratitude practice. And it doesn't have to be earth-shaking. It can be I'm grateful for this fresh water we have, or sunshine, or this new customer. Good hair day. Yes, there you go. So that's a way of shifting perception in our lives or in our businesses. Now, you mentioned the gene keys is something that's influenced you. How did that relate to this change, being able to change your perception?
Are you familiar with the gene keys?
I've only heard of it. So what is it? Sure.
So the gene keys is basically like kind of a map. So if you know about astrology, then the gene keys is kind of like a map that's derived based on your birth date and time. And it's like a map for your life, basically like what you're here to transcend almost, because it shows you the shadow levels that you're operating at, the gift level that you can move into, and then the siddhi level, which is the level of enlightenment, right? And it's a beautiful system, and it really helped me to understand that I was stuck at the shadow level in so many ways, And the way that he's written the book as well it's by Richard Rudd. It's beautiful because he recognizes and believes that we are all of the same collective consciousness. So if we work on ourselves, we actually make that change in the collective consciousness as well. And a lot of people, they struggle to find meaning or purpose, and it doesn't have to be like a huge endeavor. You don't have to, your purpose doesn't have to be to become Bill Gates so that you can be a philanthropist and donate billions of dollars. It can be just as simple as you returning to your truth, because just that will create that shift in the collective consciousness. So, and you probably have seen this in your own life, where when you have shifted yourself, the relationships around you have shifted. Like I've seen this in my family, for example. And it's very powerful, because you change the dynamics. And again, you can bring that into business too. You shift yourself and you shift the dynamics of your business relationships. So the gene keys for me was really, really empowering, because it really opened my eyes to the potential of ourselves, the potential of humanity. And I would recommend that to everybody, to get your map done and to read it, and explore that and go and just return to yourself. Like that's the end of the day, right? Like Fida. So Fida is one of the teachers that is very good at explaining how the gene keys work and how you apply them. And she says that there is always a search, and the search is always spiritual towards the self-knowing. Even our search for financial security, our search for abundance, our search for relationships, all of those, we think we're actually searching for money and all these things, but it's actually a search towards yourself, to your inner self, to your own self-knowing. And that to me makes a lot of sense. So yeah, I would recommend reading her beautiful interpretations of the gene keys as well.
I definitely agree with that. I think certainly in the case of business, it really is a spiritual activity. We're spiritual beings being entrepreneurs, not entrepreneurs occasionally having a spiritual experience. Because anything I do in my business to grow it, typically when I do something, say I'm going to do Facebook ads or whatever. Now, either I need to learn how to do that, which is me growing that skill, or I need to hire someone to do it. And usually when you hire someone, you have to do some personal growth in order to be able to hire the right person and hold the space for them so they can be successful in that role. So, and similarly, businesses often get to a plateau. They'll grow to a certain level and then they find it hard to grow beyond that. And that's because they haven't made the spiritual shift inside the team within the business that can hold a larger business and can, delegate in even a bigger way.
Yeah.
Because it is around letting go. Typically, as you get to having more people in the business, you can't control everything.
No. Yeah.
And with really big businesses, you hardly control anything, I don't know how good a spiritual leader Bill Gates was, but he certainly was in charge of, many tens of thousands of people. But he couldn't even manage all those people. He couldn't even manage all the frontline managers, right?
Yeah, there's no way.
Right. He can only set the picture at the very highest level and, hopefully motivate people to go in a direction that was, growthful for the company.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is interesting. I mean, also related to that intuition you had, I think we do get premonitions of things.
Yeah.
And I was watching this movie last weekend called The Power of the Heart, which there's a lot of interviews with spiritual teachers, but it also had this, they mentioned an experiment that had been done where they measured people's mind response and their heart response, and I think some other body bits. And they were showing random pictures generated by a computer, and they were either peaceful pictures or violent pictures. And when they showed the violent picture, the person's brain waves would shift, because they'd had a mini trauma, seeing something. What was fascinating to me, though, was that the heart shifted 5 seconds before the picture was shown, and it was random. We didn't know if it was going to be peaceful or violent, but somehow the heart knew with accuracy what was coming up in the future. And
that's incredible.
It is. And this is true of, there's this analogous thing. There's an experiment ongoing where they have these random number generators running in the planet, all at different universities. And they look at how random they are, or are they, not random.
Yeah.
And before 9/11,
I've read about that. Yeah. It's so cool.
Yeah, before big events happen that affect a lot of people, the random number generators go less random, like before 9/11 and before the verdict for, I forget who the guy was. There was some famous American footballer who was accused of murder and got off. And when that verdict, and that trial was followed by
Simpson, was it?
Yeah, O.J. Simpson.
Yeah.
When that verdict was released, again, they saw the same effect. Before the verdict was released, there was a shift in the randomness of these random number generators. It was.
Yeah. So if you have a scientific mind and you need science to explain it, then there you go.
Well, at least it involves computers and statistics. I think a lot of scientists have difficulty with this kind of science. In fact, they label it as pseudoscience because they don't understand it.
Yeah.
But it definitely is a way to do that scientifically. So, okay. So I know we've been talking for quite a while. Is there anything else you'd like to share with listeners about letting go ego or business intuition?
I think at the end of the day, I feel like everything around us, we have to take it with a pinch of salt almost. And when, let's say things are not going well in the business, or your employee is acting up, your relationships not the best, I think the first place to go to is actually to yourself, and to look within first, and to do that work first, because like you said, so within, without, so without, right? As within, so without. So we really cannot change. We cannot change anyone. We cannot change the world, but we can work on ourselves. And I think that is the main, for me, the main takeaway.
It's a lot easier to work. In some ways, it's easier to work on ourselves because that's totally under our control. On the other hand, a lot of people have their ego in the way.
Yeah.
So there's resistance to
it's
working
too confronting.
on ourselves.
It's too confronting to say, oh my God, am I really like this?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I'm curious, you mentioned, I know we're wrapping up here, but I did want to, you have some daily practices that help you, or your intuition and guidance.
Yeah.
I'm just interested if you are okay sharing what practices you follow.
No, yeah, sure. And it's nothing revolutionary, really. Basically, the most important thing for me is meditation. And I do use mantras that come from, it's a nickname mantra that comes from the Sri Guru Granth side, from the Japji side. And that for me has been like, whenever I add meditation into my life, I was almost joking about this with my husband, because I was telling him that whenever I've added meditation into my life, I feel like things always go wrong. But that's not true, right? Because it's actually just it's not going wrong, it's going right. It's leading me towards, back, right, to myself. And that for me has been the most transformational. And I know many people do it, and it's nothing revolutionary, but for me it's been huge. I can see a night and day difference when I don't meditate and I do. And I have other practices. Obviously, I do my daily qigong practice, and I do yoga once in a while, or sometimes a few times a week. Sometimes I go without it. I really just respond to my body. That's another thing that I had to learn, because I realized that my body couldn't handle high levels of intense exercise, and that was one of the reasons that it would break down. So again, releasing attachment to, why can't I do HIIT? Why can't I do weightlifting? Why can't I wanted to be like everyone else, but I forgot that I had to just be myself. And so my practice is just really listening to myself and then responding to that. But to listen to myself, I have to meditate and I have to go within.
So yeah, I mean, I use mantra in some of my meditations.
So I have a portion that's mantra, and then after that it's just silence.
Silent, yeah.
Yeah, silence. Really, 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 I crave silence.
Well, that's tricky in the modern world, where there's a lot of noise from cars and people and music.
Yeah, partners.
Partners, yes. And I mean, it used to be, if you go back 150 years, they didn't have recorded music. The only way you heard music was if there were musicians who were playing it.
Yeah.
But you couldn't be walking along, unless you chose to sing yourself or you were with other people singing. You couldn't be walking in the forest and hearing music. Now people have earphones in, they're listening to things.
Yeah.
And they carry their phone around and get lots of interruptions. It's
Listen
like people
to
are
afraid.
They're afraid of silence.
It's so beautiful here when you go into silence, because you hear what you were not even aware of before. You hear the trees, you hear the rustle of the wind. You think you can't hear wind? Go into a forest, into a windy forest, then you hear wind. You hear the crickets, you hear it. It's just, you hear life, basically. And you only hear that when you go.
Yeah, I mean, I get a lot of messages from animals or insects or birds. There's a book I referred to called When Animals Speak by Ted Andrews. And I mean, you can ask your own intuition, hey, what's the message from this particular animal? Particularly when it's something unusual you hadn't seen before. Like, one time I was at a yoga event and there was this big 3-foot long snake on the path.
Oh my gosh.
But snakes, one of the symbolisms of snakes is transformation, because they shed their skin.
Yes.
So, and I hadn't seen a snake on the path before or since, and I've been going to this event for a lot of years. So. But that was the message I needed to get in that moment. Another time I was in my room in apartment in Peru, and I think I got up in the middle of the night to go to the bathroom. And then I heard this noise and I saw this rat put its nose around the bathroom door and just look at me. And I stared back at it and it just wouldn't go away. It was like a very bold rat. And
that's hilarious.
But rats have spiritual meaning too. They're very persistent. I mean, also in the Ganesha image, the rat is the part of that image that gets through all of the problems in the small spaces.
They have a temple of rats in India as well.
Oh, I have to go see that.
Yeah.
So I think by being silent and being observant, we can get more subtle messages so it doesn't even have to come into our health as a sickness, or come into our business as a disturbance, or come into our relationships as an argument. If we hear this intuition at an even earlier, more subtle stage, we can just flow with it. So that's my thought. Speaking of mantra, I've been doing a mantra for the last 375 days, I think it is now, or thereabouts, which is a Guru Ram Dass chant for the heart chakra. And I just want to share this I showed this to you earlier, but I just want to share, I've got this little Guru Ram Dass picture I carry around with me. And it's been to the Golden Temple and various other places that I haven't been to. But yet. Yes. Now I've got my Indian tourist visa, which was quite an ordeal to get.
I know.
Yes.
I know. Been there.
Yeah. Yes.
Done that.
I got the 5-year visa because I didn't want to have to go through that ever again.
Yes.
5 years.
Yeah. So, I have the OCI now, so I've got the same rights as an Indian, hopefully.
Oh, how cool.
Yeah. Overseas citizen of India.
Right. So, but chanting is very powerful, and it's a very easy way. I know people often say they have difficulty meditating, and if you haven't tried kirtan or tried chanting, I'd suggest giving it a try, because it's very hard for the monkey mind to keep on talking when you're singing a repeated.
Definitely, even the most, are you aware of transcendental meditation, TM? It's what all the celebrities follow. And you have to pay for someone to teach it to you. Even they have the same concept where they give you a mantra,
right?
And you focus on the mantra, you meditate on the mantra, and that's why it works. It works because you give your mind something to focus on.
Right. Well, and also I believe that these mantras that are thousands of years old and been repeated billions of times, they create a morphing field. They become more powerful by the repetition. It's sort of like a pop song. You look at Beatles lyrics and songs, they have a much more powerful effect than a new song typically has, because so many billions of people have sung those songs. I mean, I'm not saying the Beatles songs are mantras, but I'm just trying to give an analogy that you know how when you have a good pop song, it can stick in your head.
Yeah.
Mantra can do the same thing, but in a more positive way.
Totally.
So, yeah.
It's hard to be angry, when you have a mantra going on in your head.
Yes.
It's difficult to react in a very unconscious way if you actually have a mantra playing in your head. It's actually quite hard. Try it. It's almost impossible.
Well, I have experienced during an argument with someone, just mentally repeating a mantra, and it does clear me. I think it shifts the space.
Yeah.
Instead of thinking about what I'm going to say next.
Yeah.
It's also good to listen to the other person, so there's a bit of a contradiction there, but never mind. So if folks want to find you online, what are the best ways to do that?
Well, I guess you can just connect with me on Facebook or Instagram. Facebook Komal Kaur and Instagram Komal's Chronicles.
Well, we'll put those in the show notes at the Intuitive Leadership Mastery site. And thanks so much for coming on the podcast today.
Thank you for having me. It was really fun.